everybody. Welcome to WorkRise Shorts. I am Molly Scott, Principal Research Associate here at the Urban Institute. And today I'm here on behalf of WorkRise, our Research to Action network focused on jobs, workers, and economic mobility, hosted here at the Urban Institute. We have a great conversation planned for today with Jhacole LeGrand-Dunn of Digital Promise. She's the Senior Director of Pathways there, and she's also a member of the Retail Opportunity Network. We're really lucky to have her with us today, and we'll be diving into her work on how to design learning and employment records to promote greater equity in the job market. So welcome, Jhacole.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and to talk with you all today.
Great to have you here too. Before we start, I wondered if you could just take a second and explain for those of us who don't know yet, what's the learning and employment record?
Yes, so a learning and employment record is a digital record that you can kind of think of as like a resume. And so what the learning and employment record does is it allows individuals to have some ownership of their credentials, be those credentials that they have gathered through their education and academic pursuits, any upskilling opportunities that they've had, their work experience and background. But then the extra step, and what I think is so beautiful about the learning and employment record, is that it also looks at some of those things that we haven't always traditionally thought about as being a part of our skills record and our resume, if you will. So some of those skills that you may have acquired just in your experiences in life, right? So for example, that might be if you were an individual who has if you have children and you've had to manage, what child, addressing child care for your child when, you're in and out of different events, or if you had to, organize your schedule around all of the different, aspects of your life with regard to having a child and being a working parent and things of that nature. Those are things that people don't always think about as a life skill that is transferable to the way in which we do work, but they truly are skills. So the learning and employment record has a way of kind of parsing out those skills that we don't always think about. It may not always show up in the traditional sense when we think about our background and our abilities. But it does provide us a way to kind of give rise to those things. And it also empowers the employee to kind of say, sometimes there are things on there on a resume or on not a resume, but a job posting that you may think, oh, I may not have that experience. And you may not make the connection to some of the things that you do in your day-to-day life that really do speak to your ability to do these things that just may not have shown up or may not be as readily available in the traditional, CV or resume writing setting.
Mhm. So what problem are learning and employment records solving? What's sort of the purpose of them?
I think the big thing that learning and employment records seeks to solve, or that I think we can solve, is something that is what we're trying to solve across the board as individuals who are advocates for ensuring that there are accessible pathways for individuals to the workforce. And that is just that: accessibility, number one, and also sustainability. When we think about accessibility, like I mentioned before, sometimes with regard to learning and employment records, we think, or when we're just thinking about the job market in and of itself, right? Individuals may feel like there are jobs out there that they don't have access to because of limited experience or background, or even just the recognition of some of the lesser traditional pathways to education and upskilling, right? Sometimes there are employee posting or employment postings that speak specifically to criteria for education that may be more along the traditional route. But through the learning and employment record, and especially as we bring in more industry related partners, we will be able to name and match these skill sets with some of the things that people have historically said, oh, well, you need a bachelor's degree or a master's degree in effort to do these things, where you might have someone who has significant work experience that would speak to the same level of, or even possibly more from a work experience standpoint that may not necessarily show up from a person's background with just the academic credentialing as well. And it's not at all, I want to name that the intent here is not at all to malign or suggest that those credentials are lessened or marginalized. It's just in an effort to ensure that people see that there is value across the board for the credentials that people bring to the table.
Right. So it sounds like it's sort of a tool for increasing access to opportunity for a lot of folks. And I know that you guys have a explicit emphasis on equity. Could
Mhm.
you tell me a little bit more about what your organization's particular work around LERs consists of?
Absolutely. So right now, we're doing one of the things that has been, I guess, really important for me is my particular area of work looks to connect our research to practice, right? And so we're actively working on a project right now that's looking at accessible pathways for Black learners and workers in technology. And so when I think about LERs in connection to that work, and I mentioned earlier about this piece with industry partners, what we're allowed to do by combining our efforts in this work and really thinking about what we're seeing through the research and what we're seeing in the pursuits of really developing LERs in a way that they can ensure that there are help to support equity. I won't say ensure, but help to support equity in this work because it takes much more than just these technological advances to ensure equity. That's a people thing.
Mhm.
Um, what I think we're able to do in this is really think about the way in which we provide wraparound supports and we provide accessible pathways for individuals to, number one, learn about the opportunities that are out there, learn about the ways in which they can not only garner these opportunities and get upskilling for these opportunities if perchance you're not necessarily the potential employee is not necessarily ready, but what are some of the opportunities that are available to you so that you can become a viable candidate for these roles in the future? And then also, what are the things that we can do to ensure that there's sustainability once you get into these roles? The thing for us with regard to the equity piece is like I'll bring up, I'll mention one of the statistics that we're seeing. Like over the course of the last couple of years, we've seen a rise in the number of people of color, particularly Black and Brown people in the workforce. And so on the surface, that seems like those are things that are to be lauded and are to be applauded, right? These are things that we should really be excited about. But when we really dig into those numbers, what we're really noticing is that while we see the increase in numbers, we're not seeing an increase in we're not seeing a viable number of individuals who are making a livable wage in the workforce when it comes to individuals who are from Black and Brown populations, right? And so the objective for us here is to not only provide additional access to the roles, but additional access to the skilling that will allow individuals to know what's out there, know how to become upskilling, but then also from the side of the employer, make sure that they're aware of what's happening with individuals in the workforce so they can say, or individuals who are applying for these roles, so that they can say, here's where we're seeing deficits, and that we can begin to speak to where there are needs for additional upskilling because we're short in this area, or we're finding that people don't have these specific skills in an effort to, develop and fill these roles that are needed. And so it's just that synergy of trying to bring the people to the roles and ensure that there, again, is some sustainability to roles that will allow people to make a livable wage and then also ascend to other roles so that people don't feel stagnant. That's the big push for us here as well. This idea that when we get people to the roles, we get them to certain the faces in the places where they can ascend to different things, but then they may feel like, okay, but now what? I've done this role for 2 or 3 years. I have a desire to move forward. Are there other opportunities for me there? And that's where the industry partners are so important in this work.
Thank you for that. Um, so when you're thinking about the lessons that you're learning for your own process, I know you guys do a lot of co-design, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
What are some of the big takeaways about sort of principles to have in mind so that LERs are designed in a way that really provides equitable access? Thoughts about things that you're learning along the way with your industry partners and with a lot of the workers that you've been working with as well.
Absolutely. That's something that we're really giving a lot of attention to right now. We're working with Skills Forward, who just recently introduced 6 grantees that they're working with in the production of LERs. We've been working with some other groups as well, and our intentions with that work is through the support of our UI UX researchers, really thinking about the end user experience and how users interface with these LERs from just a accessible standpoint, right? Are the LERs developed in a way that they're user friendly, and not just on the side of the employee, the potential employee, but also on the side of the employer? And this goes back to that synergy piece that I was talking about earlier. That's why the industry partner piece is so important, because in addition to these LERs being accessible to employees and them being able to build them out in a way that really is going to be reflective of who they are and make them viable or appeal to potential partners who are utilizing the LERs, we've really got to change the way in which and I say change, but I think maybe just influence, I'll say, the way in which industry partners look at how we source and source viable candidates and think about what is skills and what are the skills that we are looking for, and how do we acknowledge or even identify the skills in different potential employees and for roles even.
Yeah,
And so I think in our efforts to try to help individuals build these LERs that we think have the potential to be so incredibly useful on both sides of the spectrum. It's just bringing together the right parties to have conversations around the development of the product, around how we source individuals for roles, and around what this looks like after we bring individuals to industry and to industry partners for sustainability moving forward. So not just so that it's good for the individuals who utilize LERs on the front end and are able to, garner these roles and move forward with employers, but so that we can continue to improve upon this process as we move forward as well. I think there's a lot of room for growth here. We are in a very interesting age with, generative AI and all of these different pieces that will be playing a part in this. But I name this anytime I have these conversations. Nothing takes the place of people, right? And so I think it's so important to have these conversations with the people who have the ability to influence the technology, so that we make sure that we are developing it in a way that really speaks to the needs and the accessibility and the equity piece for all parties involved.
absolutely. So just one more last question before we close out. Um, who do you think is the audience for this work? Who do you hope sees it, adopts it, loves it, scales it, works with it? What do you envision?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. And I'm always, I get excited when I get asked this question, but I also get a little nervous because the answer is broad, right? The potential for this to work is so broad from like I said, from the aspects and the perspectives of potential employees, and their ability to name and share those skills that some may be garnered through a traditional route, as well as others that may be garnered through, upskilling or just your lived experiences as an individual, right? Having, done childcare or having worked, in farming or any number of different aspects that may speak to your ability to and your skills level. But then in an effort for those to really be recognized and for those skills and those attributes to mean anything, industry partners and post-secondary institutions, those are higher education and workforce, all of these parties have to play a role in this, because again, the synergy around all of these parties coming together is what's going to ensure that these potential skills are recognized, that we can kind of have some accountability around what validates a skill that an individual is bringing to the table and names in this process. And then also to make it sustainable. How do we make this sustainable so that from one partner to another, these skills read the same, and the way in which an individual is, kind of perceived by one particular partner who may have garnered them an opportunity in a tech industry, that is transferable to another partner if this individual wants to make a lateral or, a vertical move.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing a little bit about your work. It's really exciting and very on the cutting edge. Appreciate you, Jhacole. Thank you so much.
Thank you both, and thank you all for the time.